Hello and welcome to Career Connect. My name is Nsigi Mkhize and this is the show where we are speaking about everything you need to know as a student and a graduate to make it in the world out there. Today we'll be speaking about how to become effective in everything that you do. Now, if you're an effective student, the chances of you going out and becoming an effective graduate and an effective employee are really, really good. So we've got two great guests with us today. They're going to speak to us about being effective and how they've managed to be effective in the space that they're working in. Hello.
Hi, Nsiki.
Thanks so much for joining me. Please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. So we'll start with our student for today.
My name is Thulam Konazi. I'm from the Verts Radio Academy and I dabble in some content producing as part of the course at Verts. And yeah, that's what I do. I love the media industry. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Malini Ramsamy. I'm the CEO of Franklin Covey South Africa. We are a performance improvement company, and really we work with individuals from entry level all the way to the most senior level in organizations. And essentially what we do is help organizations get results that requires a change in human behavior.
Fantastic, so you know a lot about being effective.
I hope so.
So a lot of people who don't know, the Franklin Covey series is all the 7 habits of highly effective somethings, right? So students, parents, whatever it is, how to be effective, you know. So before we get into the content, what is effective to you? You know, what does being effective mean to you?
So when you think about effectiveness, effectiveness is around my mindset. What is it that I would like to achieve in my life? Being proactive towards that, designing it, living a life by design as opposed to living a life of default.
Yeah.
And when you think about effectiveness, you're talking about what results am I getting? Am I effective in that? Whatever it is, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a test, whether it's whatever, what kind of results do I get from being the way I am?
And yourself, Tula, as a student, you know, what does being effective mean to you?
I think being effective is most importantly time management. Like you need to, like all your priorities, you need to have first priority, second priority. Because when you're a student, you're young, you have school, you have friends, you have parties. And studying what I'm studying and being some sort of like the industry that I am, you get to go to events, you get to meet people. So you can kind of get lost in the parties and the people that you meet and just the industry that you're in. So I think time management is very important, and knowing your end goal, like end results, where you want to go, is very important.
You sound very, very crisp and on the cusp of being effective in everything that you do.
Well, easier said than done.
Definitely, right? Because in your mind you have a plan and you think it's going to work out exactly how you've thought about it.
But life happens.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So when we talk about being effective, I think a lot of it is being able to move from just, you know, sitting and very static and being reactive to situations to becoming proactive and making sure the things that you're thinking about and what you've planned actually comes to fruition. How do we go about setting up our mindset to be effective people?
I think I just want to hook onto what Tula was saying as well earlier around getting lost in the things that you're doing. And being effective is being clear on that compelling why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And that really is a formula for success, being very clear on a very compelling why, together with academic skill and being rigorous around that, and what are the things that I need to do, and building on top of that social life skills like time management. So it is a culmination of those things and getting it into your head, because remember that when we're talking about mindset, it is a paradigm. It is about how I view all of that which is coming at me. And when I'm clear on what is my end state, I very quickly then can see, well, what is my mindset? What is my skill set? What are the things I need to do in order to get that result? In the absence of the mindset, all of the books that you read, all of the things that you do is going to have no value if you have not chosen to think differently about your end state. What is it that you want to get?
Yeah. So how do we clarify the end state, right? Because as a young person, I could be sitting here, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to have the car, I want to have the corner office, and the end goal is great, you know, and perhaps I'm studying something that my parents said, you have to go study this, or it's the only course I got accepted to, and I'm really just winging it. I'll see what happens, you know. How do I start creating the bridge and joining the dots that take me from my non-responsive state to what my end goal needs to be?
Yeah. And you know, Jim Collins, an author of Good to Great and Built to Last, talks about the hedgehog concept. Familiar with the hedgehog concept? He talks about being passionate about something. What is it that it's your top 5%? You're really great at it. He then talks about, well, if I'm great at that, can I be best in class at it? And if I'm best in class at it, what would I need to do to make that an economic engine? Because those three intercepts into a sweet spot. And when I can identify that, I'm able to think, okay, what then can I do with that? And how do I create a life for myself based on that? Because it is a paradigm, a mindset of I am the product of my choices, not my circumstances. Because it's easy to fall into that category.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it happens to me.
Yeah, I was born here, this is my family. I'm not good at this subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reality is that life will happen to you. But if you have a plan, you act upon life. It's like if you think about the game of chess, you have the pawn and you have the origin, right? The pawn gets moved by the origin. You can choose whether you want to be the pawn or the origin.
Yeah.
If you're the origin, you control your end state.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Yes.
So when you're thinking about being effective as a young person, it's firstly, you know, stepping back and deciding that your circumstances aren't dictated to you, doesn't have to dictate your life. You can think about your end and then allowing yourself as a person to be the kind of person that can have the end state that you want, you know. So being clear about what you're passionate about and then going after it, but not as a haphazard by chance thing, but really working towards changing your mindset and starting to think about, I have to be effective, I have to put plans in place and then take the actions that are necessary to make sure that those plans are accomplished.
Absolutely. And you know, we've got some great examples in South Africa where people have come out of really difficult circumstances and are making it. I was at the WITS Open Day and I happened to hear a professor that did the opening address, and he talked about the really difficult circumstances he was placed in, but how he decided that I am going to have a different life regardless. And he went ahead to find it. Shirley Zinn, who used to be she comes out of Standard Bank, Woolworths, etc., came out of really difficult circumstances. I myself, I grew up in a township in Phoenix, in Durban. So you have to decide.
Phoenix girl made it. Phoenix girl made it.
Yeah. What is it you want?
So what happens to the people who look at you, she came out of Phoenix, she came from here, and they think to themselves, oh, but that's just a once in a lifetime thing. You know, I think sometimes people look at other people and think, oh, it only happens to those people, or it only happens to this kind of person. In your experience, is there a clear difference between the who it normally happens to?
I love this quote. I saw it somewhere. I can't remember who the person that said it, but it said, whenever you see a man on top of a mountain, you can be sure he didn't fall there.
Yeah. He didn't get a helicopter up there.
So what does it mean? It's deliberate. It's intentional. It's thought about. You've got to be very clear on what is it that you want. You know, you look around and you think, do I want that?
Yeah.
And I'm by no means saying that there's anything wrong with it. People are they're comfortable, they're content If you're okay with that, it's cool.
Being effective requires work. This is so interesting. We're going to talk a bit more about that after the break. Stay tuned for more content about being effective, understanding what it takes to be effective, how do you create effective habits, and also what are some of the challenges that could prevent you from being effective. See you just now. Hello, welcome back to Career Connect. I'm Ziggy Mkhize, and we're still talking about how do you become effective as a student and an employee. I am joined by Tula, who's a student at the WITS Radio Academy, and Mari Lee, who's the CEO of Franklin Covey South Africa. Yes. Okay, so we were talking a lot about, what it means to be effective, how do you become effective, and all of those things. I just want to know from you firstly, what are some of the challenges that keep people from becoming effective people? From you, Tula, as a student, you mentioned earlier on that it's important to be able to manage your time. So what keeps you from being effective, even though you know that managing your time is very important? And from your perspective, with the graduates and people that you've trained, and even executives, because I think we think about executives and we assume that they're really good at everything. What have you seen are some of the things, even at higher levels, that keep people from being effective? So we'll start with you, Tula.
I think firstly, as I've mentioned, time management, but it's really the end goal. We've spoken about the end goal, but sometimes it's the building blocks to getting to your end goal. Sometimes the challenges come from that. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. Some people say there's a dark place between knowing what you want and getting to the place you want. So that becomes the challenge, and sometimes not understanding how you get there. But through finding information is a challenge, and kind of understanding how I get from this point to this point.
Sorry, just on the finding information, is it because there's too much information, or is it really knowing what the good sources of information are?
I think in the beginning, it's not knowing where to go, and then eventually, if you are willing to go there, sometimes there's too much information, sometimes it's like different stuff. Sometimes it's too much information, sometimes it's not knowing how to use the information you have. I think those are the challenges. Yeah.
And I think from what I have experienced, whether it is looking and working with students, all the way to working with the most senior executives, people go through a maturity continuum, if you must. We as infants and as we grow are in dependent mode. Stephen Covey in his book 7 Habits talks about this. We are in dependent mode. We are dependent on our parents, for whatever, for financial aid, for food, for etc., etc. As we grow, we move into independent state, which we seem to think that is the ideal. And as youngsters, it's like, I'm independent, I can do this on my own. The reality, though, in order for us to be truly effective, we need to navigate towards interdependence. Because independence on its own, whilst it's necessary, it is insufficient in an interdependent world. Because bearing in mind that we are fully human because we engage with other humans. And if we are unable to assess and ascertain how do I engage in this relationship, how do I move from a private space into a public space, if I do not have the building blocks, I'm effectively becoming codependent. So if you cannot move up into the interdependent space, you become codependent. And some of those building blocks are built into the 7 habits. Now, when you spoke earlier about the 7 habits, that is only but one of our many programs. Franklin Covey has earned its name through the work of Stephen Covey as the 7 habits people, but that's not really who we are. We really around performance improvement that looks at behavior change. And behavior change in itself is not enough. People have to choose. They've got to change their mindset, their paradigm. Because if we want small changes, then we work on our behavior and it's fine. If we want quantum leap changes, though, we work on our paradigm. And I think that some of the building blocks is built into the 7 habits, which we can talk a little bit more about as we go through the show.
Okay, so we have our challenges, so if you don't realize that you're interdependent, it's going to become difficult for you to make that quantum leap, and if you don't realize where to find the information, or if you feel overwhelmed by the information, it then becomes difficult to figure out what your building blocks are to help you advance. How do I know if I'm being effective? What are the key things a student or a graduate needs to be doing to ensure that they're being effective in their work and they're being effective where they are working?
So really, when I talk about whether I'm talking to graduates or whether I'm talking to corporate, and I ask, what would tell you that you have been effective? You've got to go right back to the beginning and ask yourself, when I took this role, did I ask myself this question? What contribution do I want to make? So, as a student, what is the purpose of going to university? What is the purpose of anyone going to university? Yes, you get a degree, but a degree is not the sole purpose as to why we go to university. We go to university to really strengthen the muscle around critical thinking. Because when we become critical thinkers, not cynics, I'm not talking about the cynics that are fussy about everything and they find a fault in everything. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about individuals that can critically analyze, why is it the way it is? Yeah. What can I do and contribute that when I leave, this spot that I have left is better? Because that is my contribution. Whether it is as a receptionist, a clerk, or a CEO, or a student, what will I be remembered for? Will my professor remember me? Because those are some of the basic things that students don't realize, that actually there's such a vast difference between high school and university.
It's a huge jump. It's a huge leap.
And you probably experiencing that, and you think like, I was like the top of my class and everybody loved me in school and they know who I was and my teachers loved me. And I come to university.
Nobody knows your name.
Nobody knows me.
Can I just jump in and ask you a question? You said high school and university. In terms of coming from university to the workplace, how do you change your mindset and how do you become effective into switching into that environment?
So, I can't tell you to change your mindset without knowing what was your mindset. What I can say though is that when you walk into a work environment, Kendrick Lamar says this as well, be humble.
I love when CEOs quote Kendrick Lamar.
Be humble.
Be humble, yes.
It is so, there are people that have worked in an institution for 20 years, 30 years. They have made that institution the way it is. Yes. Give credit to the work that they have done. They're not old, out the door people. They have made that institution. Be humble. Take note that this is a learning space, even if you have to carry the coffee. And there isn't a greater, more admirable characteristic than humility. Because when you come across people, they are so willing to help you grow. When they can see, yes, and they want you to grow. I don't think that people are selfish or, you get those, but inherently people are not. If you of course come across with an attitude, and I got here with a degree, your degree is just the entry ticket. It just allows you to play the game. The rules to the game, you've got to learn on the job. And they will give you all the wrong rules if you walk in with an attitude. Yeah. And I think that's, if there's only one thing you can do differently, it's just that. And there's of course a lot of other things that when we think about young people in a workplace versus the older people in the workplace, because you've got almost 3-4 different generations all sitting across one boardroom table. And you've got to be cognizant of the different dynamic inside of that.
Definitely, that makes sense. So, as a young person walking into a space, clearly define your vision, know what it is that you want to accomplish, where it is that you want to go, know where to find the information, and start implementing that, and even if it's making small plans and small steps to get to the end goal, at least you'll learn along the way. Even if you're making mistakes, you can figure out what the mistake is, go back to the drawing board, rework it, come back and actually see what works for you, and really being mindful of your contribution and how you leave a space once you've entered it. And even if it's something simple as carrying the coffee, be prepared to learn and understand the place where you're working is your learning space. And in doing that and integrating and knowing and learning how to be interdependent, we then become effective people.
Yeah, and I think also graduates, what is it that graduates have over anyone else, and why is it that employers are looking for graduates? The thinking is that as a graduate, you can anticipate a need. And that is a proactive mindset, because proactive people initiate, they take responsibility, they're effective, they take accountability, and they begin with the end in mind, thinking about, okay, what will there's a short term and a long term. What will the end of this day look like for me? End of the week, end of the month, end of my career.
And then thinking forward and planning.
Yes, and putting first things first. It's habit 3. What are the first things, though? Being able to define that, because I love it when Stephen Covey says this. He says, things that matter most should never be at the mercy of things that matter least.
That's very important. I like that. So I've got a friend who's a medical doctor. She's just qualified. She's doing her serving, that 2-year period. And one of the things she says, when the ward is packed and they need to get stuff done, she'll just think to herself, get into a zone and say, watch me be effective. One quick tip of what you do in your life to be effective.
I plan. I do a 30-10. So
You plan.
Yeah.
I have a to-do list. It actually helps.
To-do list every day.
I mean, just tick off everything. Even though you don't finish everything, but you can say, I did these 7 things today.
And that keeps you motivated as well.
Keeps you motivated.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation, and I hope anybody watching this feels the impact to be more effective in their lives and in what they do.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Stay tuned here to BDTV to catch more of Career Connect, to understand how you can be effective and build other things in your life so that you can be proactive in everything that you do. I'm Nzigi Mkhize. Thank you for watching.